They had to humiliate Madison and Ian in some way. Seeing they were about to go, Kelsey shouted, "Madison, I'm getting married the day after tomorrow. You're coming, right? At the Reddington? Right next to the Pink Star Hotel." Luke's family booked an entire floor. Kelsey and Luke swelled with pride as they saw the envious gazes of the passerby who had overheard them. Their venue was located right next to the Pink Star Hotel and was a place that most people couldn't afford. It was second best only to the Pink Star, which only families like the Westons and the Thompsons could afford. Any of the other wealthy families had to settle with the Reddington. Nevertheless, it was still a really swanky place. Most people could only dream of going to. Diana perked up upon hearing this. She turned around and pointed at them. "These two are hilarious," she said to Olivia. Olivia laughed insincerely, but Diana seemed not to notice. She smirked. "Olivia, dear, why don't you give them a copy of the wedding invitations we just printed yesterday? After all, a sister should be there for her older sister's wedding." Olivia raised her eyebrows in mild surprise and pulled an invitation from her bag. The one she pulled out was from the first batch. There was a light blue bow on the outside of a gold and silver wedding invitation. Simple and elegant, this was the signature color scheme of the Weston family. Madison took the invitation gently from Olivia's hand. She wanted to deliver it personally. She passed it to Luke and Kelsey. "I hope that when I get married, all of you can come and watch the ceremony," Madison asserted. "Of course, I will come to your wedding," Luke said with a calm and collected attitude. Kelsey still had a smug look on her face. She reached out and pulled the wedding invitation from Madison's hand. She flipped it over and asked her, "Does Ian really have the money to pay for a wedding? It won't be worth wasting all your money at one party." As she spoke, she saw what the invite said. Kelsey's eyes suddenly opened wide. The invitation trembled in her hand. "Madison, your wedding reception is at the Pink Star Hotel?" When Luke heard this, his face turned pale. He snatched the invitation from Kelsey's hand and looked at it in shock. He felt his chest tense up. It was suddenly a little difficult to breathe. The invitation clearly stated that Madison and Ian were the bride and groom. He could no longer pretend it wasn't happening. The facts were right in front of him. Luke felt so uncomfortable. "Madison, must you marry Ian? Don't you think you'll regret it?" he asked inwardly. Madison nodded. She turned around and stood next to Olivia and Diana. Luke gripped the card in his palm, crumbling it. His intensity was honestly a little frightening. "Madison, I will wait and see if you actually end up marrying him. Soon enough, you'll come back to me, begging for forgiveness. You'll be mine soon enough," he thought. Diana and Olivia were unfazed by their run-in with Luke and Kelsey. The three women walked around the shopping mall carefree and excited. They didn't return to the Weston house until close to dinner time. Diana lay down to rest for a bit after they returned. She was exhausted from the day. Olivia seemed to have something to discuss with Edward, so she disappeared with him. Madison went to her room and looked online for jobs to apply to. "After all, I'll have to start my career soon, right?" she thought. While she was browsing the web, her phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. She didn't answer. Madison had a habit of not picking up calls from numbers she didn't recognize. But a moment later, the phone rang again. She hesitated before finally picking up. "Hello?" Madison asked softly. "Madison, it's Lynn." The woman's voice sounded a little grave. It gave Madison a bad feeling. "Where are you right now? I'm trying to find you." Lynn spoke. "Just say what you want to say over the phone. I'm already in bed." Madison didn't want to meet Lynn in person, and claiming it was too late was the perfect excuse. Lynn's cold laugh came over the line. "Madison, if you marry Ian, I'll make sure you regret it. Just try me," she threatened. Madison's face hardened. The Greenwalds had refused to help with the wedding, and now it seemed the Morris family didn't want her to marry Ian either. "Lynn, I need you to understand something. My marriage with Ian is solely between the two of us. No matter what, it has nothing to do with you. Not to mention the fact that Ian doesn't like you. And even if he did, he would only like you as a friend. If you do anything to upset him, I will make sure you regret it." Madison's voice was filled with cold loathing. It seemed like so many people didn't want her to marry Ian. She was sick of worrying about others sticking their noses into her business. Madison went on. "What opinion do you think Ian would have of you if he knew that you called me to tell me this?" Lynn felt silent for a moment, but then her soft laughter came back over the line. The sound made Madison tremble with anger. "What are you laughing at?" she thought furiously. Soon enough, Lynn was laughing so hard that it was difficult to catch her breath. After a long while, she finally calmed down enough to ask, Madison, do you think Ian is with you because he loves you? Don't you think that's a bit naive of you? Madison clenched her phone so tightly that her fingertips turned white. No matter how intelligent or clever she was, one possibility kept her up at night. It was the possibility that Ian didn't love her. She feared that it might be true. It was suddenly so clear to her. Their relationship was just a momentary infatuation on Ian's part. She didn't know why Ian was willing to marry her, or even why he was protecting her. Zach couldn't protect her, and she couldn't protect herself either. The Greenwald family would rip her apart until there was nothing left. It was like living with a pack of hungry wolves every day. Hearing nothing but silence on the other end of the line, Lynn knew she had gotten the reaction she had wanted. She felt a twisted sense of pride. Then she spoke to Madison softly, putting on an air of tenderness. Oh, Madison, I really feel for you. Even if Ian doesn't like me, at least he respects me enough to straightforwardly reject me. The way I see it, he was protecting me. But what about you? I heard that you two are married because my brother doesn't want you anymore. I don't know how you got on Ian's good side. She's talking about Ian, the man she's been pining over for 2 years. How could she be so willing to let him go? Does she just want to make me feel insecure? Madison thought. You're the least important member of the Greenwalds. Can you really compare yourself to someone like me? I'm the favorite of the Morse family. My parents and brother have always doted on me ever since I was a child. Maybe we should make a bet. Lynn trailed off, her speech turning into biting laughter. She got a hold of herself and continued, Let's make a bet. How soon do you think before you and Ian will get a divorce? Madison's face went ashen, and her chest heaved up and down violently. She wanted to hang up the phone, but some masochistic part of her needed to continue listening. For some reason, she felt that it was important to hear these things. Lynn was enjoying herself by that point. Let me guess, she said nonchalantly. How about 3 months? Or is that too long? Maybe just a week? She laughed cruelly. Madison gripped her blanket in frustration. Lynn, what exactly are you trying to do? Are you just trying to threaten or scare me? If so, you'll have to try harder than this, she replied. Lynn snickered. I hope you're prepared for the wedding. I can't wait to see the look on your face when he abandons you. Lynn hung up as soon as she finished talking. Madison helplessly let the phone drop by the bed. She bit her lip. Inexplicably, a name suddenly appeared in Madison's mind. Claire. She remembered Lynn mentioning the name to Ian. Madison's mind was a mess. Did Ian love this woman, Claire? Was their relationship serious? Do I have to leave if she comes back? She wondered. Because she didn't know anything for certain, she could only make random guesses. She might have been entirely wrong about everything. Suddenly, she heard a key turn in the lock downstairs. Madison jumped. After some moments, she heard someone enter. Madison's throat felt dry all of a sudden. She desperately wanted to go downstairs and pour herself a glass of ice-cold water. She walked over to the door. It was Olivia and Edward who had returned. The two of them went into the living room. They were silent for a while until Olivia spoke. Is Madison asleep? Madison, hearing her question, stopped in her tracks. Just as she was about to close the door to her room, she heard Olivia say, Edward, do you really think that Ian will stay married to Madison? Madison was stunned. She crept downstairs and stood quietly in the hallway, holding her breath. She couldn't let them find out that she was eavesdropping. She hid behind a large vase in the hallway. Edward also seemed surprised that Olivia would ask such a question, but he still replied evenly. Well, they already have their marriage certificate, right? I don't think Ian would go back on his word. Olivia opened her mouth but didn't say anything. Then she sighed. I only know that Ian had been dating a woman for 2 years before he met Madison. I'd always thought that he would marry her. I just don't understand what changed his mind. Olivia, Edward said sternly. Without thinking, he turned his head to look upstairs. Since Madison was still living with him, he didn't want her to hear what they were saying. He also knew the worry that festered in Olivia's heart. Some things are over, and there's nothing you can do. Try not to worry so much. Olivia sighed. I'm just afraid that Ian will regret this in the future. Olivia and Edward fell silent. They remained in the living room together for a while before heading to their room to sleep. Neither noticed the figure standing in the hallway, obscured by a large face. Madison's entire body was trembling. She stood stock still, unable to move from the spot behind the vase. Her face was as pale as blank paper. Her hands, hanging by her sides, were clenched into fists. The doubts that Lynn had given rise to were now confirmed by Ian's parents. So Olivia is afraid that Ian will regret marrying me, she thought despondently. It turned out that Ian had a girlfriend for 2 years. If we continue our relationship, what will happen when that woman appears? Madison wondered anxiously. More specifically, what will Ian do? Will I come to regret everything? Now that she knew Ian had feelings for someone else, she wondered if she still had it in her heart to proceed with the wedding. Even though the Westons didn't believe in divorce, she wouldn't put it past them to push for divorce for the sake of their own son's happiness. She could guess this just by listening to Olivia's words. Madison had no clue what to think or what to do. In the silent Weston mansion, Madison curled into a ball. She sat on the floor and hugged her knees tightly to her chest. She felt like a lost child, trying desperately to find direction in life. Ian, you had a girlfriend that you dated for 2 years, and your relationship was still good. Why did you agree to my proposal? Why did you lie to me? Why did you make me think that we could make it work? Why did you make me so dependent on you? Why did you make me care for you so much? She thought, and kept mumbling in her head. However, even though she had so many questions, she didn't dare to ask either Ian or his family. Still, she needed answers. Suddenly, Madison thought of a person who could be able to tell her more about the Weston family. The next morning, Madison packed her things and prepared to go home. Over the 3 days she had stayed with the Westons, she and Ian had barely seen each other. Even when they had, there had been other people around. She had been quite comfortable there, despite having Diana breathing down her neck the whole time. When she came downstairs, Ian's family smiled and greeted her, as if what she had heard the night before was never said at all. "Don't worry about the wedding, dear," Diana said, taking her hand. "Olivia and I have almost everything prepared for you. All you need to do is relax and wait for your big day. Don't you worry about anything." She winked at her. "Trust me, I'll give you plenty of things to worry about after the ceremony." Madison smiled shyly and looked away. Olivia and Edward hugged her and said their goodbyes before asking their chauffeur, Kenneth, to take her home. She had not been in the car long before she got a call from Ian. "Are you on your way?" he asked. It felt like it had been so long since she had heard his voice that hearing it now made her heart clench. "I'm in the car," she replied. "Kenneth's taking me home." "I've been swamped lately," he spoke after an awkward pause. "As soon as things calm down, I'll come and find you." He sounded tired, and his voice was thick with tension. Madison smiled slightly, but didn't say anything. She was quiet long enough for Ian to assume there was a problem with their connection. "Madison?" he called out. "I'm here," she said. "I know you have a couple of major surgeries coming up, so focus on that. Kelsey's wedding is coming up, and she'll need some help at home," Madison explained. Ian could tell something was wrong, but he didn't know what the problem was. He murmured his assent and ended the call. Madison asked Kenneth to drop her off at Silverwood, where she was meeting Zach so that they could go to dinner. He simply nodded. Zach was already waiting at the curb when they arrived, and Kenneth helped her out of the car and drove away without having spoken for the entirety of the ride. She stood in front of Zach nervously, feeling like a helpless child. She remembered when Stella had brought him home for the first time. Madison had known nothing of betrayal then. She had just been a lonely little girl with no mother or siblings. Her father had always been cool to her, but when John moved Stella and Zach into their home, she had naively thought he had found a mom and a big brother just for her. Reality was that she became an outsider in her own home, especially after Kelsey and Alex were born. Still, Zach had been the only person in her family who had ever shown her that he loved her, and she had trusted him more than anyone in the world. With a jolt, she realized that the little boy who used to hide behind her parents had grown into a strong, confident man. "I'm so proud of you," she thought. "Hey," she said softly. Zach had been surprised to get her call, and he had cleared his schedule for the day just for her. Having grown up with her, he could tell something was on her mind. He took her hand and walked her over to his car. "I'm starving," he said. "Are you? Let's get something to eat," he suggested. She nodded. When she was with Zach, she could ignore everything and just quietly hide behind him. He made her feel in a way that her parents never had. They hardly spoke through dinner. He waited until she had finished eating before asking the question that had been on his mind since she had stepped out of the Westons' car. "Mads, what's going on with you?" She looked down at the table and folded her hands on her lap. Zach recognized this as one of her defensive postures, and his face sank slightly. He could tell from her body language that she was uneasy. She had learned from a young age to look calm and composed, to hide the fact that she was hurt or scared and needed help. He had watched her shut down like this before. "What do you know about Ian?" she asked after letting out a deep breath. "About his past?" Zach frowned and stood up. Without saying a word, he threw a wad of bills onto the table and reached out to take her hand. Startled by the dark look on his face, she let him lead her out of the restaurant. "Zach, wait, listen to..." He ignored her. He didn't feel like listening to her defend the people he thought were bullying her. She stopped him when they got to his car. "Can we talk about this, please?" she pleaded. "Get in the car, Madison." he snarled. She shook her head. If I get in the car, there are only 2 roads we'll take, she thought. One leads to a divorce lawyer, and the other leads to Ian. I'm not ready to take either one just yet. Zach's frown deepened. She was scared, but she mustered up the courage to stand up to him. Can you just talk to me? She asked miserably. I just want to know about his past. I'm sick of being kept in the dark. He froze. He had never known her to be so passive. Madison desperately needed someone to talk to, but she couldn't say anything about the Westons just yet, not even to Zach. I knew he had a boyfriend, she said. I just want to know why they broke up. Can you stop being so mad at me about this and talk to me like an adult? His face softened. Mads, you're my sister, he said with a sigh and stepped away from the car. When did you lose your self-confidence? She wasn't sure how to respond. If I tell him that I actually care about Ian, he'll probably get mad again, she thought. What do I say? He looked into her eyes and couldn't bear to scold her. Who told you? He asked softly. So it's true. It's true, and you've known the entire time. This is why you didn't want me to stay married to him. I bet it doesn't have anything to do with family at all, she thought, reeling. Tell me what's going on, she said, her voice soft but firm. They stared at each other over the roof of the car like statues. Neither moved nor spoke for what felt like minutes. Finally, Zach sighed helplessly. It's all in the past, Madison, he said. She didn't say anything. She just stared at him and waited for an answer. He did have a girlfriend, he told her. He barely spoke above a whisper, but his voice carried through the parking lot, and each word weighed on Madison's heart. They were together for more than 2 years, but he never told her who he really was. When he proposed, she turned him down. Madison felt her heart drop. She hadn't known how close Ian had come to getting married before they met. I don't know why they broke up, Zach said. I know her last name's Thompson, and there are rumors that their families had arranged the marriage before all of this went down. She never knew that Ian's a Weston. Her face crumbled into a scowl as she bit back a bitter laugh. Another arranged marriage. They fell in love under a veil of family secrets, and those secrets broke them up. What happens when the truth comes out? Where does that leave Ian and me? She thought. Madison suddenly felt very cold. What kind of man have I married? What kind of woman am I turning into? She wondered. She took a long, deep breath and tried to calm herself down. Does he know about this? Does he know he was being groomed to marry her? Zach shook his head. Daniel says he doesn't, he said with a shrug. He paused and looked away. She knew there was more he wasn't telling her. As she waited for him to spit it out, she tried not to feel like the sky was falling in on her. The day you and Ian got married, he said, unable to look at her, was the day they broke up. Hearing this, Madison was speechless. Maybe he was just bored, she thought. She had come up with thousands of reasons, but she had never expected the truth would be like this. She tried to imagine how his breakup had happened. It played out in her head in a series of flashes, like a photo montage. Flash, he says he needs to ask her something. Flash, he pulls out a small box holding a diamond ring from his pocket. Flash, he feels like the happiest man in the world. Flash, she says no and walks away from him. And then I show up with my ridiculous proposal, Madison thought, when she could think again. Had he agreed on impulse, or had it been a moment of anger and hurt? She leaned against the car door, her breath coming in little gasps. Her heart felt like it was being crushed inside her chest as she fought to breathe. She tried not to give in to wild conspiracy theories. I need to calm down and think, she told herself. But I need to know why he agreed to marry me.
Dear listener, the upcoming episode will be today's last free episode of this story. Come back tomorrow to enjoy free episodes, or get coins now to continue listening.
Madison's head was spinning. She felt as if she were falling from the great height and floating in the air at the same time. Her mind went blank except for one image, one face. Ian. He had almost been married. She hadn't let herself think too much about why he had agreed to the proposal so readily. I guess I just kept telling myself that he had his reasons. Maybe he was being forced to marry by his family like I was. Maybe he was just tired of being single. Maybe he was just bored. She thought. She had come up with thousands of reasons. She had never expected the truth would be like this. She tried to imagine it was right when it happened. It played out in her head in a series of flashes, like a photo montage. Flash. He says he needs to ask her something. Flash. He pulls out a small box holding a diamond ring from his pocket. Flash. He feels like the happiest man in the world. Flash. She says no and walks away from him. And then I show up with my ridiculous proposal. Madison thought, when she could think of it. That he agreed on the proposal. It had been a moment of anger and hurt. She leaned against the back door, her breath coming out of her asks. Her heart beat against the crushed inside her chest as she fought to breathe. She tried not to get into wild conspiracy theories. I need to calm down and think, she told herself. But I need to know why he agreed to marry me, and I need to know what he's capable of in the future. Yes, Zach's voice sounded like it was coming from far away, and she realized he was helping her. He opened her door and helped her to the car. Are you okay? He asked. She tried to speak. She leaned against the headrest and closed her eyes. With a deep sigh, Zach leaned and stared at the front. He didn't know what to do. The door somewhere though. He took her to the beach instead. With the windows open and the warm sea air blowing in, Madison's breath became deeper and more even. Zach pulled onto a bluff, and they sat in the car without speaking. After a few minutes, Zach broke the silence. What are you going to do? He asked. She shook her head and looked out the window. What am I going to do? Pretend to not know anything about it and dive into my marriage without hesitation? Or should I cut my losses and walk away, despite the Westons' disdain for divorce? She thought. The only thing she knew for certain was that she was dead. She was literally using her as a shield, a crutch against a broken heart. I'm just a substitute. I'm an understudy who never learned my lines, and now I'm on stage, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. She continued thinking. What do you think I should do? She asked, her voice almost drowned out by the ocean. It's your life, Mads, he said after a long pause. It's not up to me. I already tried bossing you around, which didn't solve a thing. Her eyes snapped open. He was right. It was her life. No matter what choice she made, she had to be the one to make it. She nodded. Yeah, I know. Let me think about it for a while. Zach studied her profile sadly, but he didn't say anything else. He started the car and took her home. Kelsey was getting married the next day, and there was a lot to do. When she saw Madison walk into the house, Kelsey's eyes burned with spite. She was standing on a little platform in the center of the living room in her wedding gown, while Stella circled her like a shark to adjust a full tear and leave hair. She got the Pink Star, Kelsey's Eve. Her wedding's going to be at the Pink Star. I thought Luke was supposed to be the best thing that ever happened to her. That's why I took him. But now she's got Ian in the best wedding venue in the city. She fought to stay calm and swallow her anger. Was that invitation real? She asked Madison through a forced smile. Are you really having your wedding at the Pink Star Hotel? I'm so jealous. Madison was in no mood to placate her sister. She just rolled her eyes and headed toward the stairs. She was almost out of sight when she heard Stella hiss at Kelsey. She's messing with you, Kelsey. That invitation was probably a mock-up or something. Can you imagine some surgeon having enough money or influence to hold a wedding there? You can't take it seriously. He's just playing off his last name and hoping no one asks too many questions. She fussed with Kelsey's gown. Besides, there's no way she'll be able to have her wedding there. What do you mean? Kelsey asked distantly, admiring the diamond necklace the Morrises had sent as a bridal gift. Madison froze where she was and listened intently. The real Westons are already throwing a wedding at the Pink Star that day. Stella said with a scornful little smile. One of the younger sons is getting married, so they bought out the entire place. Kelsey smiled, relieved. The invitation must be a fake. Some sad attempt to steal a little class by some nobody doctor who's embarrassed that he can't afford a wedding. Madison's used to being a nobody, so it's a perfect match, she thought testily. They bought out the police. The words rang in Madison's ears. She couldn't help but sneer. Since learning a little bit about Ian's past, she'd been worried that the Westons might want to stall the wedding. But Ian had already been planning to propose to his girlfriend, so at least some of the arrangements would have been made in advance. There's no way she could have known that those arrangements had been made for someone else, or that she would be a replacement bride. Kelsey noticed that Madison was still in the room. "It's all my fault, Mom," she said. "If I had stopped her, things wouldn't have turned out this way." She put on a theatrically guilty expression. She had been in a funk for the last 2 days, but now that the question of the Pink Star Hotel had been resolved, and that she wasn't in danger of being upstaged, she was in a much better mood. "I was just feeling so guilty for getting married before my big sister. We should drop it." Stella smiled at her daughter with pride. Kelsey's ability to assess any situation and turn it to her advantage pleased her immensely. The Morris family is never going to know it hit them. Stella thought triumphantly. Madison rolled her eyes and left the room. She didn't bother trying to explain the wedding invitation. She didn't see the point. It was just easier to pretend that Kelsey and her mother didn't exist. Zach had watched the whole scene unfold with a frown, but hadn't intervened. There was a pang in his heart. second day at the Westons, Madison didn't see Ian. Something that had become a pattern. She followed Olivia and Diana around when shopping for the wedding. The three of them stepped into a famous dress boutique. Everyone was in a good mood. Madison regaled Olivia, Diana, and the store workers with stories, making all of them laugh so hard that they barely closed their mouths. She had always been a good conversationalist. It was easy for her to charm people. After Olivia had bought herself a dress, Madison suggested that they go to a coffee shop to rest. She was tired and figured that Diana would definitely need a break. They ordered their coffees, and then Madison and Olivia went together to the restaurant. On the way back, they saw Diana sitting at the table, looking at the pedestrians passing by outside. She was zeroing in on a young husband and wife, walking what seemed to be their parents. Madison was puzzled. She walked over and asked softly, "Grandma, what are you looking at?" Diana turned her head around and smiled, her feeling all of the wrinkles on her face. "I'm just looking outside," she said casually. "You should know that it's been a long time since I've been home like this. I've always loved watching people." Madison wasn't sure that she believed her. Diana clearly didn't want to say what was actually on her mind, and Madison wasn't going to force her. The three of them soon left and went to a men's clothing store. Madison kept peering over her shoulder. She felt uneasy, though she didn't know why. Diana and Olivia noticed her slight paranoia, but they only smiled and ignored it. "Madison," a gentle voice called out, "what are you doing here? Are you shopping too?" The voice was slightly condescending, but it was masked as amiable. Madison lifted her eyes and saw Kelsey. She couldn't say she was surprised. Only Kelsey could speak to her in such a patronizing way. Diana and Olivia turned their heads to gauge Madison's reaction, but her face remained impassive as she watched her sister walk over, holding Luke's hand. Her makeup was exquisite, and her smile was warm and gracious. She discreetly glanced at their shopping bags and noticed a logo she had never seen before. It belonged to the store where Olivia had bought her dress and looked exclusive. "Madison, why haven't you been home recently?" Kelsey asked. "I've been waiting for you every day." She gave Madison a worried look. She acted as if she was concerned about her sister, but it also sounded like she was mocking her. Mom and Dad are both really upset. Where are you staying? Hello, I'm Madison's younger sister, she said sweetly.